What's worse? A bunch of right-wing, ultra-nationalist, traditionalist, white supremacist, whatever, marching down the streets with guns, or a bunch of communists waving communist flags, marching down the streets with guns. To me, honestly, I think they're both really, really bad. If I saw somebody marching down the street with, like Nazi flags or something, I'd be like, whoa, dude, whoa, that's bad. Like, I don't like those people. Plain and simple. And if they're armed, whoa, even worse. If I saw a bunch of people marching down the street with communist flags, which represents the death of, I think, like 100 million people, and they're armed, I'm going to be equally concerned. But it's curious, then, why many people in the media don't seem to care. You see one guy with one, fringe right-wing flag, and all of a sudden everyone's like, whoa, it's happening. You get all these big organizations freaking out, screaming, the end is nigh. But how many times do we see the far left marching around with communist flags and with guns? I was in Boston. There was a right versus left thing going on. This was 2 years ago, maybe, or a year and a half ago. And I'm talking to one of the guys from the DSA. He's criticizing the right-wing side for having a Confederate flag. And he says, you see what they are there, what they represent? They're rallying around that flag. And I was like, look, guy, it's one flag. I don't think everyone over there agrees with it. And he goes, then why are they willing to stand with it? And I said to him, why are you willing to stand with the communist flag? And he goes, I'm not, and I wouldn't. And I'm like, but you are. And he's like, no, there's no one over here doing that. And I pointed to the guy waving this massive communist flag. And it was actually the Soviet flag. It was specifically the Soviet Union. And he went, oh, geez, oh, man, I don't agree with that. Right. For some reason, I don't know why, people really, really don't like, fascism, and it's bad, but they don't seem to care as much about authoritarian communism, which is very, very similar. The Soviets, the Holodomor, it's a thing. And I was thinking about this too. I'm like, I wonder, the reason I bring this up, it's from News to Share, which is a Ford Fisher, and I don't know if it's just Ford. Armed Antifa groups march in Stone Mountain, neo-Confederates don't show. A heavily armed coalition of anti-racist and anti-fascist groups assembled Saturday to oppose a planned neo-Confederate rally at Stone Mountain Park, Georgia. I don't know who was planning on showing up. I will say neo-Confederate sounds really bad in my opinion. I'm probably not a fan of them, but I would actually consider far-left authoritarian statist communist types to be substantially worse. But don't get me wrong, they're both bad and they both deserve to be thrown into the bad bucket. So I don't like either of them, you know what I mean? But where is the mainstream narrative? Where is the concern over the Holodomor? And I started to wonder, maybe it's because a lot of these people, and this is true, they're Holodomor deniers. I know it sounds silly, but it is true. I've talked to some of these people about it, and I've asked them, the Holocaust was a horrifying, horrible thing that we should never allow to happen again. And so I applaud anybody who would reject authoritarianism, and fascism and all of those things. And honestly, I don't know anybody who would support it, personally, right? I know people, they exist, but most people reject these things. What about the Holodomor? Most people don't know what it is, right? It was essentially the genocide of ethnic Ukrainians by the Soviet Union, starving them out, stealing their food, and it was horrible. It was terrifying. And I know people who are personally affected by this. But I have heard from these people saying they don't believe it was real. It was just a famine. It's a lie. It wasn't on purpose. And I'm like, that's the same thing that the apologists for fascists and Nazis say. So why is it that we aren't concerned with armed Holodomor denying extremists marching through our streets? It's shocking. This is what kind of makes me feel like, I have absolutely no qualms with somebody. I'll say this. I have no qualms with them burning a KKK member with a swastika on it in effigy. No, that's great. First of all, free speech, First Amendment, keep it safe. You might get in trouble for the fire, that I understand. But by all means, express yourselves. And I agree. Let's condemn the fringe extremists, the Nazis, the fascists, all horrible people. Not a good thing, especially for someone like me. The people associated with these movements today, they don't like me because of my heritage and my mixed race heritage. But at the same time, the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. I do not believe in that. That's a terrifying ideology or something to stand behind, especially when you consider if we're looking there's no way I would ever align with any extremist faction. They're all bad and they all deserve to be stopped. But there are so many people today that feel like because the fascists are worse, they're willing to stand behind this extremist insanity. So we'll read a little bit of this article from Four. And I have another story from France I might pop into. The event, dubbed Rockstone Mountain, had been planned for months and was expected to attract white nationalist activists, but was canceled right before taking place. The Antifa coalition, which donned the name Flower, frontline organizations working together to end racism, stuck with their original plan to assemble outside the park. The park itself had announced Friday night that it wouldn't allow anyone inside. Flower's coalition included communists, socialists, unions, left-wing militias, and other left-wing activists. The group marched around Stone Mountain community as a victory lap for the canceled right-wing event. But let me just ask, what does communism have to do with anti-racism? Now, they'll tell you it does. They'll push their ideology on you, and they've found an attack vector. These extremists, these dangerous ideological psychopaths, these fundamentalists, they have found an attack vector in mainstream society. And it's as long as they claim to, we all think racism is bad. You know, almost all of us think racism is bad. Almost all of us think attacking an individual and violating their civil liberties is a bad thing. And they've figured out they can use that label. They're actually racist. I mean, look at Northam in Virginia. The dude was he admitted to dressing up in blackface. He was either in, he's claiming now he's not in this photograph, but this is the guy who runs as a Democrat. They claimed Gillespie was the racist. This guy literally did racist things, and he admitted to it. So I see Antifa in Portland screaming racial slurs, but as long as they tell everyone they are the anti-racists, then people will march behind a flag of extremism, a flag that represents the death of like 100 million people, because that's a way in. They found it. But you know what? The average person, in my opinion, they won't research. I was watching a video about the Dunning-Kruger effect. Basically, incompetent people lack the competence to understand they're incompetent. So you'll get grifters, extremists, dangerous psychopath, dogmatist, fundamentalist, whatever, who know they can manipulate the masses with lies by attaching a name to themselves, and then they'll march behind them. But isn't it terrifying that people are willing to march behind these banners of extremism? And so, one of the issues I wanted to bring up is that I feel like civil war is kind of inevitable. I don't know what it'll look like. I mean, for one, we're definitely in an information war. There's far left extremists radicalizing people through these digital media outlets, lying about people on YouTube. Listen, people on YouTube are not unified at all. Many of them hate each other and fight each other all the time. They're fragmented, disparate groups and typically just individuals who produce content. I don't hang out with YouTubers at all. But look at these digital media outlets. This Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, Splinter. They're big newsrooms and they're all friends with each other. They are a cohesive group for the most part. They do coordinate with each other, and they do pump out fake news and lies that pushes people towards extremism, like Covington. But then these same people write fake news about YouTube, claiming YouTube is radicalizing people. The data shows otherwise. The data, actual data, not someone's opinion, not BuzzFeed clicking videos several times, actually using a system to aggregate all recommendations found. For the most part, everything leans to the left. They still lie. And it's coordinated lies. And they support each other's lies. But on YouTube, many people argue with each other, disagree with each other because it's individualist. They don't like that. They don't like that on YouTube, I can say what I'm saying to you now. They don't like that I'm going to point to this guy right here with this gun. In my opinion, dangerous psychopath. Dangerous psychopath. He's got what looks like to be a shotgun. And he's walking around with a red band. You know who wore red bandanas, red armbands? The Nazis did, right? And it's the craziest thing for me to see that. And I'm not trying to say they're Nazis, but they're definitely statist authoritarians who believe they have a right to exert force over others and to intimidate them with weapons. And I'm willing to, levy this criticism to basically any group that wants to stand behind an extremist flag and carry weapons. Plain and simple. I have no sympathy for those waving Confederate flags and marching around with guns. I really don't. I am not a fan of that. But I certainly believe on a scale, as much as I don't like those people, communism represents something substantially worse than what the Confederate flag does. Okay? The Confederate flag to many people represents slavery in the South and really bad things. I understand that. But these people march behind the communist flag, which oppressed, suppressed, and killed 100 million or more. An absurd amount of people, a ridiculously terrifying amount of people. So the point I'm making is, I wouldn't want to associate with any of those groups, but why they think they can march behind their flag of extremism with weapons, and at the same time criticize the other side as though they're somehow better. They're not. They're the same thing, and they know it. They're the same thing. They just think God is on their side. It's the famous saying, whenever a war breaks out, whenever there's a conflict, God is on my side. And it doesn't necessarily mean theistic God, What it really means is that people believe they're the good guys. They always do. They believe everything else is wrong, and it's because they're terrifyingly stupid people. They really are. I make videos frequently on this channel talking about how dangerous the world really is. These people, they want to plunge the world into a nightmare of extremism. They talk about revolution. You've got these young people acting like they're going to war, like they're the resistance fighting against the machine, the empire. And they don't realize what war is really like. They've never seen it. They've never even seen someone get a cut. Most people don't even know that a decent amount of people cannot stand the sight of a bleed. Now, and you might think you're strong. You might think it's not you. But no, there is a reflex within people that when they see a gushing blood, they go out. They just go down. I've watched it happen. These people have probably never seen someone get mutilated. They've never seen a friend die in the most extreme ways, but they sure do want to march around with guns like they're some kind of soldier of the revolution. They're terrifying, dangerous psychopaths. This is as shocking and terrifying to me as if it was any other extremist group, and I don't think we should stand for it. We should absolutely call this out. Now, I'll say this. They have a right to their guns. They have a right to their speech, by all means. But we as a society should always make sure to condemn the extremists and not let them grow out of hand. They like to use this rhetoric and claim they're standing up against fascists. But they show up with extremist flags, with red armbands and guns. You are extremists. By all means, oppose each other. But when we see these people march around with guns, what do you think's going to happen? There's going to be regular old Americans, moderate conservatives, right-leaning types, who go out with their, in their rights to carry weapons. And there's going to be a confrontation, and it's going to get bad. I will not support extremist groups, and I will say this to everybody. You probably shouldn't bring guns to these events, period. Now, I mean that. Even if you see these extremists, I'm gonna criticize anybody who would be willing to bring out a gun to these events. I understand you have a right to protect yourself, but you have to recognize they will shoot you if they perceive a threat. And so basically, we have to recognize the escalation will be inevitable as long as we have different factions willing to show up armed. We've seen bottles, Molotovs, punches, crowbars, and things like that. Typically, it's the right wing that shows up unarmed, maybe with shields, but it's the left that comes armed and they're willing to use their weapons. So if we get to the point where people are willing to go to the extremes, it's going to get bad for everybody. So you know what? Criticism to all extremist groups. But what do we see in Stone Mountain? Do we see white nationalists? Do we see white supremacists? No, we don't. We see the far left extremists waving a banner of genocide. And where is the outrage? My outrage is here. And I know you guys are outraged too. But where's the media? No one seems to care. Thanks for hanging out. I'll have another video on this channel tomorrow at 10 a.m. More videos on the main channel, youtube.com/timcast at 4 p.m. I'll see you then.